Hey, camera roll, David. How you doing?
Hey,
Good
Gene.
afternoon. Happy Sunday to you.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm in New York City and it's snowing like crazy, and you're in Minneapolis, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's 10 below. Pretty cold out.
Yeah, I think we're still in the plus, but it's snowing. Hey, listen, I appreciate you taking your time on Sunday. I know you're interested in this topic, and I wanted to bounce some thoughts off of you. Um, I put something together a while back based on many conversations I had with colleagues, people from my network and clients, and I put it actually into a system model, which I know both of us have. We had past discussions about its purpose, their purpose and usefulness. So I'm going to share something with you just in a few seconds, and I'm going to record it too so that others may maybe replay it and watch it. And let's have just a live conversation. Like I will be saying likes and ums, and I apologize. There was no dress rehearsal for this, right? At least not from my end. Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Good. So let me share my screen with you real quick, and we'll get going. Uh, Going to this screen and all right, first, what I'm gonna say is this. You see, can you see my screen now? It should be the white page,
Yes.
and you see my mouse rolling, right?
Yep.
So, okay, good. So I am taking a part of the system model, a causal loop diagram that is on a less.work side that specifically talks about relationship of velocity and rewards and degree of measurement dysfunction and some other what we refer to as system variables. I'm where you see my mouse. I'm going to be expanding on this just a little bit to give more information to myself, to you, and to hopefully someone else who's going to be watching this. I want to explore more system dynamics that sit behind this small piece, right? So let me share with you my my short, very short deck. Um, Sharing from the current slide. Do you see the understanding velocity screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, okay, I'm gonna go on. So it's a three-page deck. To me, it's already too much, right? The first page is just the title. This page is the legend that we frequently use when we do system modeling. Um, it explains what goals, variables, causal loops, opposite effects are, and some other annotations we use, like delayed effect between variables, extreme effects, regular effects, constraints, quick fixes. Those are just some of the annotations we can use, and people may improvise with those if they would like. What's important to understand uh, for others that will be watching this, if they watch it later on, in large in I'm sorry in system modeling, we really care about causation effects, not correlation. In other words, hey, it's snowing outside and I've put this work together. It's got no correlation whatsoever, right? I'm sorry, it has no causation whatsoever. It's very independent. These are two independent events. If there was no snow, I would be still doing this, and vice versa. Correlation is not something we as much interested in system modeling. Causation we do. Like for example, thinking about this topic for so many times and dealing with this issue actually made me put this piece together. And that's a causation. There's a cause and effect relationship. Having been through this discussion so many times now, I decided, okay, let me put something as a system model. So let me bounce it off of you, okay? Um, uh, is that okay with you?
Yeah. Uh,
Okay, cool. Yeah, and ask me questions if you want.
yeah. So what we're talking about here is there's a lot of times when we see things that are correlated, and sometimes management will, or people, that have a lot of influence in organization will see things correlated, but they don't really understand the causation behind that. And sometimes you know, different types of interventions that they take aren't really addressing the underlying causations. That's kind
That's
of my
right.
take on
Yeah,
it.
my observation is the same. It's consistent with my view. We are, oftentimes we look at independent events, and oftentimes we try to fix a symptom, a peripheral manifestation of the problem instead of going after the real problem. So
Mhm.
the whole idea of system modeling is to go after the root cause, to understand what's really happening under the hood. That's the idea. So without any further ado, let me take you through this, take you through my thinking, and let me know what your thoughts are. I'm going to start off with the same two, let's call system optimizing goals that I just shared on the site, right? It comes from the system thinking page of of that site. It's the last.work site. So we oftentimes see these two present within an organization. At individual level, an individual wants to get rewards. Obviously, if there are monetary incentives or bonuses or anything along those lines, they look at those as hey, we need to secure. I want to secure those for myself. And at team level, there could be a team goal. Hey, we need to produce high feature velocity. Why? Well, could be tons of reasons. Maybe because they're being pressured by local management into this, or maybe they're being peer pressured because another team is being incentivized based on high velocity. So what does it usually lead to? And of course, respectively, these two variables, one would lead to pressuring to game the numbers, and we're all humans, right? If we're being incentivized for better numbers, we'll be producing better numbers. And of course, that's a general reason why this is happening. And also, there is pressure to try actions for higher feature velocity. So if you tell me that I'm being incentivized, if I have a high velocity, I'm going to do everything I can to produce high velocity. So I created a red circumference around these two variables. To me, red means maybe not so good, right? I don't want to increase these in the system. I want to decrease them. The lower these are, the better off my system is. um, otherwise, if I increase these, then they will increase another what I refer to as a system variable, which is not a good thing to have. Degree of measurement dysfunction, essentially not being able to see what's happening in the system, right? I put these thick errors as opposed to thin ones. To me, they have a very strong impact. That's why they're thick. So because of gaming numbers and because of this pressure into high velocity, the degree of measurement dysfunction will be higher. Um, so value that we put on rewards, in other words, the higher the reward, the more dysfunction we're going to see, right? These errors imply that there will be amplification to this relationship. This goes higher, this goes higher even more. This is just my way of saying the more you incentivize me for good numbers, the better off my numbers will be one way or the other. The same thing goes for velocity. Um, this is another variable I'm considering. So the amount and quality of go-see behavior that we see from our senior management. I explicitly say senior management because organizationally, I think senior managers and executives have more impact and ability to control the system. So a go-see means essentially going to see where action is and fixing problems. So actually, instead of doing it remotely from far away, actually going to see where action is. So to me, the better, the more of this we have, the less of dysfunction we shall have in terms of measurement dysfunction. So in other words, O stands for an opposite. So this is a good thing to have in a system. The more our senior managers go inspect the system, go where action is, the more opportunity we're going to have to keep the dysfunction down. Yeah, you so far with me, right? Make sense?
Yeah, yeah, that
Yeah,
makes
cool.
sense.
Yeah,
Yep.
cool. And I'm thinking this variable also sitting downstream and being dependent on another system variable, degree of to which senior management in general supports agile transformations. And when I say support, I don't mean in spirit only, just signing a check saying, hey, go off and do it, hire a large consultancy and they will figure this out for you. Not like that. Actually going in doing something in action. So I'm actually referring to this, not in spirit only, but in action. So this goodness, if it goes higher, it's going to lead to this goodness. It's going to go higher, and this goodness is going to hold or put to, at least it will reduce this badness, if you will, right?
Hey, Gene, I wonder if we should give some examples on these. Just for folks who may not understand like pressure to game the numbers. One of the experiences that I've seen as a scrum master over the years is that when we have that goal placed on, how many story points did, a single developer or a single team, you know, um, that they need to complete, how many stories or story points. What I see is that in the estimation, when we get together and do playing poker,
Uh-huh.
the teams will increase their point estimate. So instead of something being a 5, they'll estimate it an 8 or whatever. So if they're required to have 40 points per sprint, they're gonna kind of buff it up a little bit,
Yeah,
and
I see.
that's what I've seen personally. But maybe you have some examples of these too.
No, well, I think I forgot to mention in the beginning. You are the last Scrum Master. You're scrumming teams in large scale Scrum um, adoption experiments. So I do value your view on this. I've seen this so many times as well. You incentivize high velocity, or you applaud it. Of course, you will see if you promote it one way or the other, people will be taking actions to increase it, because
Hmm.
there's so much focus on velocity, right? And we probably need to mention velocity is, for the most part, is the rate of output, not outcome. In order to deserve it to be called an outcome, there's much more required. Otherwise, we will be just incentivizing more output, not outcome, if we just say high velocity.
And especially with siloed component teams, I think we were talking about earlier is that if they're just making a component and they're getting points for that and they're feeling like they did something of value to the business, but they really didn't, like it's not integrated with the full system, it's not deployed to production or whatever, then it kind of like masks, it's like a mask, and the business can't really see the real value delivery.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah. So you hit the nail on the head, because I'll be exploring just in a few minutes some of the dysfunction we may see with component-centric team design. With the element of estimation being a part of their daily life. So
Mhm.
that's the kind of is spot on. This is going to be very interesting now.
And one question before we move on.
Yeah.
So, the amount and quality of go-see behavior by senior management and how that decreases, or it has an opposite effect on the degree of measurement dysfunction. What's an example in your mind? Can you think of any like
Yeah.
example
Uh,
that? Yeah.
So probably the best example would be executive management. Instead of relying on reports and stats and metrics, and especially if in those organizational settings where they roll through multiple organizational layers, which makes it very human error prone and numbers fudging prone, right? The best example would be having a senior executive actually attending to team level dynamics, actually maybe going where action is, maybe attending. There's an event we often recommend. It's called overall retrospective, where they can attend if they're called upon by Scrum Masters and actually look at some of the organizational dysfunctions.
Yep.
Skipping level and talking to actual developers, people that actually deliver value, would be a great way to um, you know inquire about what's going on in the system, as opposed to relying on multiple chains of command and information escalation. And of course, with that comes a lot of, there are risks with that, right?
Yeah.
So that's just one example, probably.
That's a great one. The overall retrospective is something that we use or we do every sprint, and the scrum masters bring all the feedback from the teams
Mhm.
that they don't think they can resolve themselves, and we talk about that with the different managers and product owner and other scrum masters, and we bring team representatives to really explain it. And then there's that linkage, that shared understanding that's built
Yeah,
about what's really going on and what's holding us back. So
good. Thanks for sharing. So I was just gonna say, just on that note, overall, the degree of measurement dysfunction will have an opposite effect on our ability to guide and improve the system. And this is also so far, um, I'm almost so I'm leveraging what we saw on the website, which is also referenced down here below. Another way of saying in layman's terms, if we have crappy numbers, if we have a dysfunctional measurement system, if you have a ruler that is not doesn't have a right scale, who's banged out of shape, then how can you measure? How can you improve if your measurement tools are all broken? Okay, so it's like you're relying on gadgets. You fly in a plane, you're relying on gadgets, and they're all off. What are the odds they're going to land, right?
Right.
So I'm introducing, and because this is all about velocities, ultimately we're going to tie this all together. The same very degree of dysfunction, measurement dysfunction, which is dysfunction is a bad thing, right? One less of it. If it is high, is going to have an opposite effect on our ability to use velocity as a metric for forecasting, planning, and budgeting. And God knows we've seen this so many times. We've been there. Everyone is so excited and so eager to, can we use velocity for planning forecasting? Probably you can, but not if it's banged out of shape and totally unreliable. This is actually a very good variable by itself. You want to have more of it in the system because if you do, then there's something else downstream that is going to be increased also. Another goodness, reputation of our efforts as coaches, as organizational design consultants, and the overall transformation effort, right? So this goodness could be hindered by this not such a great variable, okay? So that's just my thinking. Now, let me kind of switch to a different part of the diagram and talk about this. Likelihood that we are in a customer product-centric development effort is a good thing. So if our organization, if our business, if our senior executive management, senior executives and management value customer and product-centric development, that's a good thing. So we want to have more. We want to have more of this in the system, and we want what I personally would like to see less of this, less of in the system is dependency on traditional organizational structure and protection of a status quo of component managers. Those people that are not familiar with Larman's laws of organizational behavior, they should refer to those. And the first two say that essentially systems organizations are optimized to protect status quo of the first and mid-level management. And because of that, any attempts that we are trying to implement to improve the system will be almost considered as purist and religious. So of course, we want to decrease this variable. We don't want to have so much turf protection by component managers, because that's actually going to degrade our system. If I were to take this variable, which is a good one, we want to have more of it in the system. If I were to expand on it, I would probably say something like this. Because of it, if it gets increased, then likelihood that a real product is widely defined. So in other words, we want to define our product wide enough, so it's not just a small component of the product, but something that's wider and something that's more meaningful to business. And likelihood that a real product owner is identified will be higher. So if we increase this goodness, we're going to increase this goodness, and this goodness is going to increase this goodness in its turn, which I'm framing such as likelihood that teams work on the same widely defined product out of the same backlog for the same product owner, while refining and estimating together. I think that's the key. You tell me as a last Scrum Master if you prefer, if you see this, and what your take, what's your view on teams actually refining and estimating together?
Well, we started doing. Yeah, my take is, I've taken the certified practitioner course with Craig Larman, and what really like what I couldn't unsee from that training was how the relationship between working out of a single product, all the teams working out of a single product backlog, and the percent of the product backlog items that any team knows well influences their ability to adapt at the global level and to change direction for the product owner, for the business to have agility. We need to learn together. We need to create a learning organization. And when you refine work together as a team of teams, General Stanley McChrystal's book is a great book on that. But
Yeah.
if you refine together, then you come to a shared understanding and empowered execution, right? Any team can pick up any item. And what we do is we do planning poker with mixed up teams. So we mix up the teams and they estimate together, and then over time what you get is a more of a cohesive estimate. And you also have, through all the diversity, instead of having siloed teams, you get all this diversity, and more of like the unknown unknowns are discovered in refinement, and we build the right thing the right way.
Mm.
So that's kind of my take on it. Yeah.
So thank you for sharing. So I think it's very consistent with how I see it. In fact, I'm trying very hard, and I'm sure you can, if you have noticed this, I am trying to steer away as much as I can from framework centric conversations. This is really not about one framework versus another. This is about common sense. The
Mm-hmm.
only thing that may give away, where I come from is maybe my signature there, or this page, but really people should not be thinking at the moment in terms of logos or
Right.
frameworks. Common sense.
Common
So
sense.
yeah, and the common sense to me is that this is goodness. We want more of this, and we want more of this because this is a good thing. I'll show you in a second what other goodness this may bring about, and what other not such great things could come along. So if I were to expand on this dependency on traditional org design and structure, which clearly we want to see less of, then I am going to make this argument, and tell me if you agree or disagree. Because of this inherent organizational complexity, we often see organizations fall into these heavy, monolithic, cumbersome, multi-layered structures, frameworks, ways of working, um, very procedural, very layered. They call them operating models, ways of working, strategic alignments. There are tons of fancy corporate words, right? But essentially, because we don't want to give up organizational complexity and status quo by single component managers and other organizational layers, we essentially adopt what's mostly um, convenient to us. So we don't really have to change much. Whatever that other thing is, whether it's homegrown or taken off the shelf, if it seamlessly if it seamlessly fits our existing complexity, which we don't want to change, we're going to take it. Agree, disagree? What do you think?
Agree. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm just validating my own assumptions here. So, and because of this complexity, what we may, so because of dependency on these complex frameworks and processes, we often will decrease visibility, transparency, and ease of communication. So here's an opposite effect. So we want to have visibility and transparency and ease of communication. We'll like these things to be higher, but
Mm-hmm.
because of complexity that we have introduced in the system, it will be lower. And there could be an illusion that, hey, if we have a robust reporting system or robust metrics, we will compensate for it. In my experience, for the most part, uh, that complexity does not go away, and transparency does not increase. Yeah.
Yep, that I see. Yeah, I see that with where you have big planning events where you create team backlogs for many sprints in the teams, and usually compounding the issue is that they're only working on one component of the system. And you imagine these teams, working in silos on their component, and they're not refining the work with the other teams. And then they have this big bang integration toward the end of the cycle, and of course there's bugs and integration failures and missed deadlines, and it ruins trust with the business. And I think, yeah, this is the right correlation, or the right causation, I should say.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Good. So good. Thank you for validating my uh, assumption here, right? So just to take it further, so I like convergent and divergent in my causal loop diagrams and my system models. Of course, I always try to keep the number of errors and the number of variables to the lowest possible number, so it's not too busy. But sometimes you need to explore more, and that's why I end up with more of these. But I can clearly see that because of this goodness, it's another way to amplify this goodness. We do want to have more teams working, refining, and estimating together, because this is actually, I'm going to show you just in a few minutes what other goodness it will bring about. And we obviously, we're doing this for a reason, right? We're exploring the system for a reason now. This not such a good thing, which we want to keep down, in my view. Dependency on traditional organizational structure is going to have an opposite effect on likelihood that a team is customer product centric. And this is kind of almost by definition of your team structure. If you have too many component teams, protected and I guess kept at bay by component managers that protect their status quo and their turf and their sphere of control and jurisdiction. Uh, our ability to build customer-centric, product-centric, feature-centric teams is going to be hindered. So because of this, turf protection, and because of this is, my team, and this is my domain, and this is my, private code, and this is, no one comes and touches it. I've built this team over decades, so please don't ruin my effort. Because of this managerial stance, it becomes more difficult to build these cross-functional teams. And of course, the whole the original organizational so product centricity and customer centricity in general will amplify this, will increase it. If our organization, if our business, if our senior management executives are interested in customer product centric development, they will be helping this. So I may probably need even put another arrow here. I don't have it, but again, these causal loop diagrams just as good as us having a conversation. Now, as I'm building it, I'm thinking maybe there has to be an error from this variable to this variable as an opposite effect, right? If organizations really want customer product centric development, they will be trying to avoid Larman's law's manifestation. Mm-hmm. So maybe someone who wants to take this diagram and work with it further, they will put another error here. Anyway, one more variable I'm looking into is this: likelihood that real teams, developers, are able to talk directly to business people, users, customers, through various organizational layers. This variable, which we want to have more of in the system, will be hindered by this one. And the reason why I'm saying is because it's going to be just more difficult for developers to talk to real business people if there is no direct proximity, right? If you have a very large organization and there is a framework that dictates that developers talk to these people and these people talk to these people, and there are multiple layers of translation, then what are the odds that our developers will be actually talking to real business people, real users, real customers?
And building the right thing.
And building the right thing, right? So because of lack of communication, what are the odds this is going to transpire? So this is going to have a positive effect in this. In other words, real teams and developers will be able to talk directly to business people. Likelihood that that there is going to be our teams will be built as feature teams. This likelihood is going to increase. So I'm going to pause for a second, so that with the next variable, I'm kind of transitioning into the hot zone, if you will. So from here, if we have real feature teams, if we have teams that are cross-functional, where team members can associate with each other's work at least, and most likely do multiple things, not just one component type of work. They're multifaceted. They're multi-skilled, not single function specialty only. Then if this is true, which we want more of in the system, this is probably also true. because estimation in Scrum and in other Scrum is the foundational basic light framework for product development, because it's based on individuals coming together and having the three C's, right? The card, conversation, and confirmation. Because there's more opportunity for people to understand each other's work, because different component skills come together on the same team, and because there's more collaboration and discussion and questions asked and answers and estimation. People are going to be estimating together. They will be flashing their poker cards, and probability of this to become higher um, is based on this likelihood also becoming high. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. I think that kind of gets back to the point I was trying to make earlier with siloed component teams, that the effectiveness of that estimation is missing the integration, unknown issues that will come up during the integration later on. And yeah, I totally agree. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So, and if we take this even further, we can say the degree to which velocity from a single team can be used as a measurement would be higher if estimation techniques are more effective or better. So here we see clearly a clear trace, right? We can trace um, degree of accuracy or measurement reliability is dependent on a goodness of techniques, as well as in its and it's based on team structure. So component teams would not be able to produce this quality accuracy, if you will. So
Mm-hmm.
and this, of course, in its turn, if we increase the degree to which velocity from a single team, one team now only, can be used as a measurement, we are going to be fixing this problem. At least we will be having, so O stands for an opposite, right? We'll be decreasing the dysfunction that we currently may have in the system. So by going from component teams that are siloed and estimating some arbitrary units that are really not, fungible, if
Mm-hmm.
we move towards feature-centric development, then at single team level, at least, we can say um, the degree of measurement dysfunction is going to get lower. So this goodness will put a halt or will decrease this badness.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And then when you have teams that can address any of the backlog items, and the backlog items are customer problems and opportunities, and that whole team can actually solve it, then their estimations are more valuable. I think that's what I'm getting out of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me introduce my next transition, but I'm going to do it with care, because if someone sees the static slide without me speaking through it, us speaking through it, they may misunderstand, and actually they could make a very bad assumption. So I'm going to be very careful what I say here now. I'm saying degree to which combined velocity from multiple teams can be used as a measurement. I am suggesting here that because of this goodness, if it goes up, this is going to go up. People that have been around Scrum and have worked in multi-team settings, that will immediately throw rotten eggs at me, and that would be right. Because what I'm also implying here, that even if feature teams were doing things not in conjunction, if feature teams were estimating in story points using planning poker, uh, the combined estimation would be a reliable metric. So in other words, they would say, Gene, what do you mean? We cannot compare and contrast story points and estimation techniques of different teams. And they would be 100% accurate, because these are arbitrary units that are specific to individual teams. My scale of my team and your team would be very different. You speak miles, I speak kilometers. You speak pounds, I speak kilos. Those are not fungible units, unless, and this is the only thing I'm going to say to my defense, or to explain my point, and this is what I'm saying here. If there is compatibility of velocities from multiple teams, then maybe this is the right transition to make. But when will we have this compatibility? When can we claim that team 5 and team 6 and team 7, their velocities are, those numbers are even, um, I'm going to be careful drafting the word here now. We're not comparing teams, but can we even say that teams that come from different, I'm sorry, individuals from different teams estimate using the same scale? It is only possible under one condition: if they talk a lot to each other, and if they estimate together, and if they refine together.
Right.
Refine and estimate and refine and clarify. True or false?
That's 100% true.
Yeah, so that's to me too. So, and here comes the point. This compatibility can be only achieved if they actually do the above mentioned, right? If they refine and estimate together, and if they work out of the same backlog, obviously, um, work on the same wider defined product, and of course for the same product owner. And then, if so, if we actually achieve this goodness, if this goodness goes up, just like we had here, degree of to which a single team velocity. So if this goodness puts a halt, decreases this badness, then even more so, uh, estimation by many teams, right? In certain ways of working, we have multiple teams estimating and refining together. It's going to put a hold. It's going to have a dramatic, I'll put a thick line here, negative, opposite effect on the measurement dysfunction. And in layman's terms, it means if multiple teams refine and estimate together, they will help decreasing our measurement dysfunction, which essentially means we can have, uh, you know, our ability to use our velocity. Now we're not talking about one team, single team, but by so many teams. There was a more opportunity for us to use it as as a metric for forecasting, planning, and budgeting. So I'm even stressing even more. This is going to be, is going to have an opposite effect here. This is a killer. We don't want this in the system. This is a very dangerous variable. So
Yeah, I mean, as a product owner, or product manager type, I, I, I question the value of understanding each individual team's velocity. Wouldn't you just want the overall product velocity? Like, what can I feed these teams? When could it get done? It seems like you're kind of missing the point if you're going down to what can this team versus this team, and you're not really leveraging them as a whole. So that's my thought on it.
yeah, I'm with you. Sometimes it's almost like a self-inflicted gunshot wound, right? We are relying on these unreliable, meaningless metrics, and they may look great when we collect them, when we add them up in Excel or in some other, sophisticated tool of record. But if they mean almost nothing, I mean, at most, what they could mean is a, hey, I'm gonna go as far as to say a component team may potentially use estimation techniques, and they may even get consistent with their estimation. They may, if they want to use those story points, fine. But what do they really achieve by it? They end up estimating and becoming consistent in estimating their output, because each component team delivers a component. What they're not saying, and people that don't understand these techniques, they wouldn't know better. What they're not saying is that, hey, we are pretty steady, we're pretty stable and pretty consistent with estimation. 35 story points per sprint of component centric work. Oh, and that team is doing the same thing. Oh, then the other team is doing the same thing, or give or take. Two grotesque mistakes come out of this. They may end up adding up these numbers, which shouldn't be the case, right? These are different scaling, different metrics, different scales. But then what they're also not saying that these components have not been integrated. There could be another 1,000 story points worth of effort to actually integrate and make them production deployment ready. So I'm not quite sure. Maybe just to ensure that teams are consistent in their rate of output, maybe for someone it makes sense to do.
Absolutely. That I mean, I've seen that I feel like that's the number one cause that releases get pushed back, or, it's this component, mentality, and okay, we're done. We got our piece done, and there's no incentive to go help out with the other component. In fact, there's finger pointing, and yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me though. And just having a product velocity and understanding what can these teams get done, and focusing on that incentivizes teams to work together too, to help each other swarm and finish off the right work. And yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me though.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciate you, reflecting this. And by the way, I'm totally conscious that this is just me, you know, uh, conceptualizing my thoughts, of course, based on many, many conversations. So this is never the best diagram. This is not bulletproof. It could be very contextual from one org to another. 5 people working on the same problem could come up with somewhat different results. But at least because I've had so many conversations and so many experiences with this, it kind of felt okay. Well, it's almost like natural. These big bubbles, these thick bubbles, thick variables to me are almost like critical, right? It's funny, by looking at this customer centric product development as a great thing, and looking at the ability to use velocity as a metric for forecasting, these both are good things. But unless we map it through the system, this may not necessarily be obvious to us, right?
Yep.
Like, this may not be obvious to us that dependency on complex frameworks is not such a great thing. But when we see what it maps into through the system, we can say to ourselves, we should have thought twice, right? Uh, so listen, I appreciate you taking the time to reflect. Um, Clearly, as I expected, it turned out to be longer than I thought. We're already at 39 minutes and counting. It is what it is. We're gonna, just probably cut in a few seconds. Anything you want to say, or just, we're gonna probably make this available to others so they can watch, reflect, and use if they want. Anything
This
else
is
you want to say?
just this has been really useful for me, and I haven't seen this laid out like this before, and I really like it, and I look forward to bringing this back to my organization. Maybe we can have some good conversations with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, if you do, I totally, welcome you if you do it, and see if in your organizational settings these variables maybe play out differently. Maybe you have other variables like proxy variables you need to put in, or maybe you want to simplify it. Or listen, if you come up with a scenario where these red variables, I call them bad things, turn into goodness, miraculously, tell me how you did it. I would like to know. I would like to know.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, listen, thanks a lot for your time. And I'm going to probably stop recording once I find the button where to do it.
All
Um,
right. Thank you,
let me,
Gene.
hold on. Let me stop recording. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to stop recording